Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. It says I'm live. So I am going to go ahead and start with the housekeeping as we get going. I see there's a couple people who've been in the waiting area as we get ready to launch. So I wasn't even sure I was going to do a live this morning because I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about, except that I made this really cool sign. And when I came downstairs this morning, I decided I'd share a couple tips on how I created and worked with the design for this. So first off, my name is Ellie May with Swift Creek Customs, and I have been teaching Siser Juliet and Romeo and Leonardo Design Studio for over 2 years now. I am one of the original testers with Siser and the software, and before they launched everything. I attended the launch in Italy, which was amazing. And then one thing has just led to another. And I have lots of videos out on the Swift Creek Customs YouTube channel, as well as I am the author of the Beginner's Guide to Siser Juliet and Romeo cutting machines. This is a copy of the printed version. So if you're looking to get started very easily with your Siser Juliet or Romeo, everything is in there to get you going, complete with through 2 projects. So we do take everything step by step and set you up for success in that ebook. Links are in the description below for the ebook, as well as additional information. And I will add links for resources on what we discuss in this video today, as well as the questions and answers that are provided when we get to the Q&A part of it. If there's additional resources, I will add those in as well. So first off, hello everybody that is jumping into the chat. I do want to let you know that I do have a dual monitor system. So I am looking at the camera forward facing, but if you see me look off to the right, that is where my YouTube studio is. And we are going to cross our fingers today, my fingers, that the technology gods are with me and we do not have a blackout. However, if we do have a blackout again when I switch over to the Siser Leonardo Design Studio software, I just want to let you know that I will try to go live again immediately. So just watch for that to pop up on the Swift Creek Customs YouTube channel under the live section. If that should happen again, hopefully it will not, but something didn't play nice last month with the Siser Live when I went to switch over to the Leonardo Design Studio software. I also have some notes here to get started with some tips for scaling your designs and for resizing and creating projects like this. Now, this is a 24-inch sign that I did cut with the Siser Romeo, but all of the tips that I'm providing can be used with either Siser Juliet or Siser Romeo. Something to keep in mind when you are watching videos is that no matter which machine that the video is referencing, it can usually be applied to the other machine. So if you're working with, you have a Siser Romeo, all of the Siser Juliet videos that are out there on the Swift Creek Customs YouTube channel will also apply to your Siser Romeo. For the most part, it can go the other way as well. Siser Juliet videos will all apply, and you can do those on, let's see, I got that backwards. All of Siser Romeo videos will apply to Juliet, however, not the 24-inch cutting width. So with Siser Juliet, you are limited to between 12 and 13 inches, depending on your materials and the projects that you're doing for the cutting width of the machine. Those are the 2 main differences there, is just the cutting width on those machines. So we have a few people in here who have joined in and said hello from all over. We have California, Michigan, and that looks like so far. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So I do, like I mentioned before, even though I created this project that's behind my head here, I should have moved it over to the side. With the Siser Romeo, this one actually could technically still have been done on Siser Juliet, but since I had my new stand, Romeo was ready to go and was able to cut on that. And I'll show you a few things that I changed on the design when I was working with it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to cross my fingers and I'm going to try to switch over to Leonardo without having a blackout. So I'm going to share my screen. And we are going to hope this works. Yay, no blackout so far. Okay, that makes me happy. I am not an expert at lives and switching screens and doing all the things behind the scenes. I can teach you Leonardo and Siser machines and Silhouette and Glowforge and other things, no problem. But all the technology behind the scenes is not my strong suit. So what you can see here is this is my design. I have opened the design. This is what I cut with. It's actually not quite exactly what I cut with, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a look. Now, I have also included the link to this file if you would decide to cut it. I'm going to start fresh, though, with the opening of the design. So I'm going to come over here to the little plus sign so I can open a new design mat. And you can see my artboard. It currently now shows with a cutting mat. I'm going to come over on the right-hand side and I'm going to choose the artboard. And I'm just going to select material roll. And I will be able to set this material roll wider than someone who has a Juliet simply because I have a Romeo that has been recognized. So I'm actually going to change this right now to 24 by 36 inches. So this shows we have a 24-inch wide material roll. It's really just our artboard or our design mat right now. I'm going to come into File, Open, and I'm going to open the SVG file. Now, I do want to point out here, I have a Silhouette logo as the SVG file. You probably have your computer is set to a shows some other different icon for an SVG. This is simply because I have set my computer, Windows computer, to open SVGs with a double click into Silhouette because that's what I've been doing for years, and I simply just haven't changed it. I'm going to select the SVG file. And when I do, nothing happened. There we go. Okay, my computer's running just a little bit slow with all the gadgets. I'm going to choose this cut only for the SVG. It's going to look a little bit funny. I'm just going to click next. Colors are black. Click apply. And what you can see here is that this design opens really, really large. So the first thing I would caution on is that when you have a SVG file that is intricate designs like this, and it opens at this size. I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit by hitting F4 on my Windows keyboard. So when this file is open, this SVG file is opened, it is 41 inches tall by 83 inches wide. When I scale that down, you do have to watch because if I go too small, those little tiny pieces get smaller and smaller and smaller, and sometimes it won't cut right. Now, I didn't even think about it because I was doing this as a 24-inch at the time when I created the decal. But if I tried to go smaller than that, like a 12-inch, it may have some issues with cutting. So the first thing I want to mention here is that on any of your designs with the design selected, you have measurements on the left side and at the bottom. So those are going to be the dimensions of the file or the design, whatever you have selected on your screen. If you have multiple things selected, it's going to be the dimensions of those multiple objects that you have. So I'm going to collapse this artboard here. And there are two main ways that you can scale a design. Me, for the fastest way, I just come down to this little corner bounding box in Leonardo Design Studio. It is a little round circle, and you have these points along the way. So on each corner and in the middle of the design, top, bottom, left, and right. If you grab it on the corner bounding box, one thing you'll notice over in the bottom right is where my head is. I can't change that because it's YouTube Studio. There are mouse hints. So if you have this little icon here checked, there will be mouse hints that show up there. And you'll have to just trust me on that and look at it in your Leonardo Design Studio software because my head is blocking it. So when you move over top of an object, or if I move over top of this little corner, my mouse hints say resize from the center. If I hold the shift key down, I can resize from the center, and you'll see that it is resizing that design from the center point of the design. So now I'm going to hit Control Z and undo that. I'm going to come back here. The next mouse hint that I have is Alt. Resize non-proportionally. So if I press the Alt key and I resize this, I can shrink this design down. Oh, it didn't do it. It didn't hold. And you can resize non-proportionally, which is not typically what you want. I'm going to hit Control Z. That's going to undo it. And then the last one on the mouse hints is Control. Resize by multiple of the current size. So let's see what that does. Control. And all I can see on the screen is that it just doesn't show me until I click off my mouse. I'm not sure. Resize by multiple of the current size. I don't use that often. I'll have to look into what that means exactly. My computer is running slow with this large design. And that's normal. That's nothing to be, nothing unusual for this size of a design. Okay, I hit Control Z to get back to the beginning. So the fastest way that I resize designs is by this corner bounding box. And I'm going to, you can either scale it up or you can scale it down. I'm going to scale this down to approximately what I want it to be. So I know I set my media size as 24 inches. My sign is 24 inches. So I want it to be down in that size area. So at the bottom, it shows 23.89 inches. Now, if you want an exact dimension, you can come down here in the properties panel. At the very bottom is your width and your height. The most important part of this is this little lock here. So when it's locked, that means when I type in a number to one of these boxes and I press enter, it is going to change the design proportionally, which means if I type in, let's go to 36 inches wide, and I hit enter, it's going to adjust the height proportionally to make that design 36 inches. If I were to uncheck this or to click on it and unlock it, that means that I can change width and height independently of each other. So if I change this width back to 24 inches and hit enter, it's going to just scale it down width-wise. It's not proportional to the height. So those are the fastest ways to resize and scale your designs. You have your corner bounding box on your design, which is what I usually use the most to start off with. And then you have your width and your height at the bottom of your properties panel. And it seems very simple, and it's probably something that most of you have known, but it is really interesting how many comments or questions we get about how to find width and height and scale tools. So I wanted to make sure to cover that as well. Now, one thing I want to show you here before I jump into using my little tricks to sizing a design is if I come over here to a new design tab, I want to show you a little bit about white space. So I mentioned that your dimensions are at the side, the left side, and at the bottom. When you open, typically when it's a PNG file is when you're going to see this the most. So if I come up here to File and Open, and I open the PNG file, I think this one's a JPEG. It's not showing me. This one I know is a PNG file because I tested it earlier. So if I open this PNG file, I'm going to just open it as a background image and set it at 300 DPI and just click next. So it did open large, but what you can see here is that I have excess space. Let me change this artboard real quick. I don't want to print and cut. And I do want it back to the material roll. So we can see this when it's not grayed out. It's easier to see. So I'm just going to zoom in here. So currently this design, this PNG, which is a graphic image, is a photo. It says it's 20 inches by 20 inches. PNG and JPEG files are rectangles and squares. That is how the file is saved. It depends on how the designer has saved it, whether there's going to be excess space around that design. So here you can see at the bottom and at the top that there is excess space on this design. And it is not an accurate measurement of the actual design. That out here, because there are times, especially when you're working with a print and cut, that if you have all of this excess space around the design area, it reads the entire selection box around your design to fit into those print and cut marks, the registration marks. So your design may fit within the registration marks, but if this selection box is outside of those registration marks, it's not going to look right. So when you're working with different file types, you do want to keep that in mind. That's a whole other class of trying to work with a PNG and print and cut. I can link some resources in the description below after the video is done. So if you have any questions as we go along, please let me know. Drop those in the chat so we know we have those. Do keep them kind of topic related for now, but we will open it up for questions and answers at the end for anything that you have. Okay. So when I was creating this design, the first thing I would recommend is if you're doing your own designs, tape measure. I have just a standard little mini tape measure here, or you can use a fabric tape measure. This is a little bit easier to work with if you're trying to get inside of the frame area. So when you go to measure your designs, let's over here. It's going to be really small in the window, but I'll bring it up close. So when you're working with the size that you want for your design, you want to keep in mind that you don't want the outer edge of the frame. You don't want to measure outer edge to outer edge. You want to measure inside edge to inside edge for the top and the bottom and the left and the right. Now, you will notice I do have a little bit of white space here. I actually did that on purpose. Just because my vinyl was 24 inches, this sign is exactly 24 inches on the inner edge to inner edge. If I tried to cut that on my Romeo, it can be done, but put this back up here. But Romeo and Juliet can go off of the vinyl if you don't have it placed exactly right where you want it and you're trying to cut edge to edge. If you don't send it perfectly, which is complete user error, and I've done it many times, Romeo will cut off the edge of the vinyl and come back on the vinyl. I don't know another cutting machine that actually does that, but you really don't want to do that. You don't want to cut into the cutting strip that is underneath your blade housing that provides the resistance underneath to get that clean cut. It has happened. I have not yet had to replace my cutting strip. It is a replaceable part if you do have damage to it. But I just gave myself a little bit more room for success when I set this up. So I just brought in that design just a little bit. So when I went to set this design up, I set the design up to be, let's collapse that. And I came down here to my scale tools after I used the little corner to bring that design down just a little bit faster. I came down here to these width and height measurements and I entered 24.75 and I hit enter. And then not 24.75, 23.75 and I hit enter. And that is going to give me the width that I cut this design out at. Now I could have rotated this design and cut it the full 24 inches, but I just didn't want to. I just wanted to use the width of Romeo. And I'll have a video out later, hopefully this week, that shows the kind of the process of the entire cut and weeding of this design. But you could rotate it. But then I would have this strip over here of excess vinyl that I could just use for a future project. I didn't want to do that. Complete personal preference. Every user is going to be different. Just make sure that you're lining it up properly. So this is what I did for my design. So I have my design. And I knew that I wanted it to be within the 24 inches. So my sign, inside edge to inside edge, measured 16 tall and 24 inches wide. What I do is I use the draw shapes in the Siser Leonardo software. In the bottom toolbar, I click on the rectangle. And then I am simply going to draw out a rectangle. And it automatically fills with a color. In this case, I'm using the shape as my template to decide on the exact size of the design I think is going to look good on that size of a blank. With the design selected, I'm going to come over here and just choose stroke so that it's going to take the fill color out and it's just going to have a line color around the outer edge. And then I can come over here to my width and my height. I'm going to unlock this and I'm going to change the width to 24 inches wide and 16 inches tall. So this is essentially the size of my sign. And then what I can do is I can select both my design and my template. And I'm going to use the align tools in the bottom toolbar. I'm going to align middle, and then I'm going to align the horizontal or the vertical. So this gives me an idea of what my design, the size of the design, is going to look like within the shape that I have. And I use the shapes and measurements like this for all projects. So if I have a t-shirt, I measure how wide I want that design. And as we know, designs can be taller than they are wider. So some designs look better, larger, and some don't look as good, larger, or they're more difficult to read on a t-shirt. So I use the shapes, basic shapes, to draw out a similar area from my blank. It doesn't really sound like a big surprise. I mean, it's nothing that is a revelation, I guess, but it makes it so much easier when you get going on this design. I can decide if do I want to add text at the top of this because I have white space on the top or the bottom. You would not believe how long it took me to decide whether I was going to do text or not. And that stalled my project because I just wasn't sure and I wanted to cut everything at once. When I cut this, I still wasn't sure if I was going to add text. So I cut this piece, and then I thought if I want to add text afterwards, I can go back and add text. I can actually add text to it at any point in time. It doesn't all have to be cut as one piece. So let's see. The next one might be something that some people have not seen yet. So before we go there, I want to make sure there's no questions here. And then another thing you can use is you can also use your template box as a weeding box if you wanted to. You just send it when you go to send it to cut. You make sure it's the same color. Let's go to send and see what it shows me. Now, hit cancel. I'm going to click off to deselect and then click on send. So currently it is not showing my box because it is outside the cut boundaries. So I'm going to come back here back to design. And I ended up, I did not add my weeding box because my weeding box here, I did not cut it when I cut the original project because my weeding box is the exact same width as my material that I have set up in the media width. So when I go to the Send tab, it is over the edge, and Leonardo and Romeo can't see that design portion. If I scaled it in just a little bit, so let's come back out here and I'll show you this. Let's zoom in on this section. If I select only my template, and let's move that so it is completely centered, select only my template, and if I move this in, we'll just move it in 23.8. Oh, that one didn't work. 23.8. There. Now it went. I will need to center this again. And then when I go back to the Send tab, as long as I have it positioned fully on the material, now you can see it's going to show both. And I click off, click Send. It shows both my design and my template box. So if I click Send, now you can see that the template box is there, and it could act as a weeding box. In this case, it's larger than the design, and you do have a little bit more excess wasted space here. So I ended up not using it as a weeding box. I'm going to go back to the design here. And I think I have it so far. So let's take a look close up at this design. The sign that I showed you, I actually cut this design out of Oracal 631. And I bought a roll specifically to do wall decals because I was making one for the behind my Siser, my universal cutting stand. And I used a Romeo and Juliet decal that I put behind it on the wall. Well, when you work with wall decals and you're putting it directly on the wall, you want a vinyl that's called temporary. The difference is temporary is a less sticky adhesive, or it's not as strong, versus Oracal 651 or permanent vinyl, which has a stronger adhesive on it. So if I had to cut this again, if I was putting it on a sign, I would cut it out of Oracal 651 because that adhesive, when I cut it at this size, I did lose some intricate pieces like these little dots here. And this is why I said, keep in mind, if your design opens large and it's intricate, when you scale it down, those pieces, they just scale down all the way. So these just cut little like periods, not even a period. It basically just cut a hole in the vinyl. There was nothing to weed because there was really nothing left after it was cut out. In this case, it's for me, it's for my wall. And some of those lost pieces were not a big deal. But if I did cut this again and put it on a sign, I would cut it on Oracal 651 just because the adhesive's a little bit stronger so that it those little tiny pieces can stick a little bit better to the backing when you're going to weed it. So those are some tips. And test cut, which I did 2 times before I cut this just to make sure that it was going to be a clean cut so that it made weeding this entire design a lot easier. It did take me about an hour and a half to weed the entire design, but I kind of like that. I can just relax. If you have a good cut, weeding is no problem. Okay, so now I'm going to show you one more trick and then we'll open it up for questions. Can I come up here and I want to show you, I showed you how you can use a rectangle to size your design for using measurements from your sign. Now I'm going to come up here to the plus sign for a new design. I'm going to change this artboard so that we can just see everything. Once again, material roll, and just change this to 24 inches by 28. That'll be good. I'm going to come up to File and Open. And I actually have to find this file, so bear with me for a second. It's in my YouTube folder for this live. If you have a blank sign, so this is not the exact sign, but it is the exact same dimensions. So you'll notice that the frame on this, I wasn't thinking about this live in advance. So my frame up here is black, while this frame is more of a wood background. They're the exact same size sign though. I'm going to open this as a background image, click next, and then I'm going to uncheck this print and cut job. I don't need the registration marks. Now my photo comes in a lot smaller. In this case, I'm not really cutting anything, but I do need to rotate this because my camera brought it in at an odd angle. So I really can use this as my mock-up, a digital mock-up of my sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use another rectangle. I'm going to just click on it. Since I had the previous one as a stroke, it filled this one as a stroke. And then I'm going to change this rectangle to the size of my sign, 24 by 16. That's going to be the inside of the frame again. So keep that in mind. Now I can kind of scale this up. And if you were creating a digital mock-up for listing on your websites, you may not, or you would want to take a higher quality photo just so that your photo would be high quality when you go to upload that. So we can see here that my photo is somewhat distorted, but I want to give you an idea. So we'll get it as close as possible here. And you can see, let's see here. I was hoping to have it all be not so grayed out for you. So I'm going to try to size this to the size of my, you'll get the idea. It's not going to be exact, but you'll get a little bit of the idea. So I'm actually going to change this. I want to crop my photo down to this frame size. And then hopefully it will show up here on my design mat. So I'm going to crop to right there. In order to crop, I need to fill my square. And then I'm going to select both. And this, I will have to go back and look. I'm not sure if it is a, let's see, I don't want remove. I have to remember the order of this. Let's try it. Push buttons, see what happens. So if I choose intersect, there, it worked exactly what it was supposed to do. Sometimes I just push buttons to see what happens. So I'm just going to bring this in. Now it is not exact simply because the photo was not proportional, but it gives you an idea. So if I wanted to mock it up, the term is called in the industry, placing the design on a blank that you might use. I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to grab this design and Control C, Control V, and then I can place this on here. Again, it's not going to be the exact size. I guess what I can do is, since Romeo can cut a little bit wider, I can make that wider. There we go. Now, if you have Juliet, you wouldn't quite be able to do that. But my frame is, the outer edge is wider than 24 inches. So now we can see here, I'll zoom in. And you could get a better idea of what it looks like on the actual frame that you might be using. In this case, I chose the black frame because I thought it was going to contrast and look better. So, do we have any questions? The biggest thing that I can say is these are basic tools in the Leonardo Design Studio software, but even though they're basic tools like drawing a rectangle, it can be used for many different things. I use the shapes as templates all the time, and I rarely ever delete things. I'll just move them off of my workspace, and then I'll save the file, and I can always come back and use that again. So if I am working with a sign like this, so these are sign blanks that I purchased at Hobby Lobby years, or who knows when, last year sometime. And I just had laying around. I wanted to do a fun project. but I could save this template file and then I could reuse it again. So it really just depends on, now it's not hard to draw another rectangle and size it again. But if you have a mock-up, you can save this frame and use that as your template for future projects, or to see what a design is going to look like, see what it would look like on a particular color shirt. My phone camera did not take a very good picture lighting wise with this. So the frame is a little bit distorted in color and proportions, obviously. I do have this really cool, it's supposed to be a level on my phone, my new phone. It doesn't always seem to be actually level. To me, it doesn't seem level, but okay. I'm going to open this up. So if there are questions, if you have something you would like me to show, as long as it's not too complex, that would be an entire other video. I am happy to go through things. So we can open this up for any questions that any of you have currently for Leonardo, Siser Juliet, or Romeo. I do not want to just sit here and randomly talk to the camera, but I would like your feedback. One thing I would ask is that those in the comments, if there are future live tutorials that you would like to see, specific, tutorials about a specific feature, about using a specific design, or kind of be a little bit descriptive, just so I can understand what the question is or what you're looking for. Please leave those in the comments below, because I am always looking for topics. Again, this one, I wasn't sure I was even going to go live tonight because I wasn't sure what the topic was going to be, but just little simple things that I do when I create and work with designs. I'm not seeing any questions over there. This turtle design is linked in the description below. I will add additional resources as well for the things that we talked about, for videos that I have on the Swift Creek Customs YouTube channel. And I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I like to give it a little bit of time, but I will continue to monitor the comments. So if you do have questions that you think of after you've watched this, whether you have watched it live or on the replay, just let me know. The best advice that I can give you is to just get in to Siser Leonardo Design Studio, start pushing buttons, start seeing what you can do, and undo is your best friend. Control Z is the shortcut, or Command Z on a Mac. Undo is your best friend. Sometimes, even when somebody asks a question on the Facebook group, there are a lot of times I just get into Siser Leonardo and I start playing around with it, because either there's multiple ways to do things, or I have to work through what is going on with a particular file. So I do the same thing. Roseanne says the explanation was clear. Awesome. Love to hear that. Okay, if there's no questions, I'm going to jump off of this and I will edit the description with some additional information. Again, leave those comments below this video. If you do have certain topics that you would like to have a live or even a recorded video on, let me know. Thanks for joining me and have a great day.